The Living Zen-podcast is a gift from the members and associates of the Victoria Zen Centre to you. If you enjoy it, please be sure to let your friends know about Living Zen. If you'd like to support our community, here are a few ways that you can do it. Download the Living Zen podcast app for iPod, iPhone, or Android. You can also purchase additional Zen Talks by Venerable Eshu on iTunes or Amazon.com. One of the most meaningful ways to show your support is by joining our Sangha as an associate. Your commitment of $10 a month will ensure that offerings like the Living Zen podcast and our online e-Zendo will continue to be available around the world to everyone with an interest in truly living Zen. To become an associate, please visit our website at www.zenwest.ca and click on the membership tab. Thank you for your support. Well, I feel like I need to be fairly brief this morning. There's a lot of people to meet. But I just wanted to, over the last few weeks in particular, I've really been placing an emphasis on the significance, on the importance, on the value of a Sangha, of a community of support. The significance of Sangha is in awakening itself. That this practice that we're engaged in, this practice of awakening, this investigation of this fundamental activity which is unfolding before us in each and every moment, an opportunity to investigate this activity, Dharma as it's called traditionally. Today, and in the Victoria Zen Centre generally, but also in the world, there has been no greater time to be engaged in this activity of investigating the Dharma activity. The resources that we have at hand today have never been seen before in this world. I receive messages from, and I'm not getting woo-woo here, they're like email messages, from around the world, people who are in New Zealand, Asia, Europe, who are able to listen to the talks that I give here, who connect with us through the e-Zendo, who sit in common space and time with the practitioners, the body of practice, the Sangha here in Victoria. Oftentimes in the sutras, you'll read these wonderful sort of metaphysical expressions about the Buddha's voice resounding through time and space and into different realms. But when we investigate our world as it is right now, this is not a metaphysical image. This is the reality. We have this opportunity. We have these resources available to us. Teachings of every type available to us. We can make relationship with any teacher that moves us, any teacher that influences us, any teacher whose words, whose practice we feel a connection with. We have the capacity now to make connection with that person without even leaving the comfort of our own homes. This is even beyond our, for those of us who are in this culture, the ready availability of food and shelter and clothing. All of this is to say we all come up with many, many excuses to avoid practice, to avoid investigating this great matter. The value of Sangha, this community of practice, which I see developing more and more strongly in this community every day. It's not to sort of have bragging rights about what a great Zen center you belong to. It's not about justifying what you're doing because there's a whole bunch of other people doing it. It's about the clarity of that relationship and the ability of those personal, intimate, closely connected relationships and how they support our practice, which is the moment-to-moment investigation of this matter in every aspect of our lives. For many people who engage in practice with a community, with a center, Sangha often constitutes the people with whom I do my formal practice. And then if we look at the original Sangha, the original community, it wasn't just a meditation group. This was a group of people who lived in fraternity, in community, in family with one another, who ate and slept and practiced all in relationship with one another. This is the value of community. What is the value of having good companions on the way? The Buddha asked Ananda. And Ananda said, it's half of the whole practice to have good friends, good companions. The Buddha said, don't say such terrible things, Ananda. For having good companions on the way is the completion of practice. It's the whole thing. Each of us has to remember that this practice is not about acquisition. It's not about gaining knowledge of the Dharma. It's not about understanding more about Buddhist philosophy. It's not about being able to talk to people and be interesting at parties about the practices that you engage in with your friends in the black pajama gang. This practice is about being awake in each and every moment of our lives. How do we engage in manifesting in our work? How do we engage in manifesting in our relationships? How do we engage in manifesting in harmonious relationship with our environment? What we engage in here together is a practice field. We call it practice for a reason. We have very structured opportunities. And these opportunities invite us, whether through chanting, or whether through bowing, or whether through walking, or even sitting, invite us to give ourselves completely to the activity that we're engaged in. When we're walking, completely walking, allowing all of the adhesions, the sticky mental, emotional, physical bits that we normally get caught up in, that we're normally distracted by, to drop away because we fully apply ourselves to the activity that we're engaged in. When we're chanting, only chanting, just chanting, completely dissolving and melting away into the activity of chanting. When we're walking, completely walking, nothing else there. When we're sitting, just sitting. Another important aspect of practice that we engage in is this transformation. How do we go from being just walking to just sitting to just chanting? Letting go of the place we were in, moving into the new home, the new place, settling in, transforming again, without hanging on, without resisting, without trying to hang on to some positive experience that we've had, but moving freely into what is arising next in this very moment. But this practice, really being able to do formal practice well, is not the point. How do you take this practiced capacity, the realization of our fundamental capacity as human beings, into the world around us, into our daily lives, so that when we're interacting with school children, we are completely 100% dissolved into the activity of interacting with that person. When we're engaged in building something, how do we completely give ourselves over to the building of that thing, where there is no self-fixation left in that? When we're at work making policy, how do we manifest wholeheartedly in the making of that policy for the benefit of all beings, without hesitation, without resistance? When we leave our work, when we walk into our home, are we able to make that same transition that we do between chanting and sitting, sitting and walking? Can we allow ourselves to completely molt, completely shed where we have been, to arrive entirely in our home, with our partners, with our children if we have them? Are we able to sit down and completely meet the dinner that we have before us? This is where practice in community comes into play. This is where Sangha comes into play. When we go out with our buddies, do we remember? Do we practice this dissolution, this affirmation of the interconnectedness of things? Do we affirm our own realization that we are not separate when we're out having a good time? Or do we sort of compartmentalize that experience? Do we try to block it out? Do we engage in activities which allow us to shore up that belief in subject-object being fixed, real, separate things? This is Sangha. Sangha is this relationship when we engage like this, when we take that step to separate, that we have a friend that says, "Hey, wake up. Why are you doing that? What are you doing?" Not in a judgmental way, not in a condemning way. This is why we have these names. And this is why I'm so emphatic about encouraging people to use those names, particularly with other practitioners. Because the Dharma name that we have for each person is a reminder, is a very subtle way. Instead of saying, "Hey, dummy, what are you doing?" you say to somebody, "Hey, Doshu." Doshu knows his name means mastering the path, mastering the way. If he's fixating self in that action, just to say, "Hey, Doshu," is a very gentle reminder to practice. Come back. Re-engage in your own capacity. Re-engage in the realization of who you truly are, what you're truly capable of. Let go of that desire to fixate self. We have a responsibility to each other in community. We like to have fun together, but it's important to remember that we are here to care for one another, not in a soppy, kind of like they're there kind of way, but to take care of one another in the sense that we support one another in awakening, support one another in realizing this way, realizing the path. This is important. So I think I need to stop because I'd like to really meet with all of you today. I'd also like to ask, this structure that we have, this form that we have, really begins to shine the more people there are. In fact, in many ways, part of the reason why we spend so much time on the form of Zen practice is so that when it comes to having more and more people, it runs smoothly. But things tend to get sharper when there's more people. So for interview, I would just ask that we keep things brief. Don't tell me about your lunches or your, bowel movements, as sometimes takes place in interview. For today, and generally speaking, if you're working with koan, we can talk about that, we can investigate that. If we're needing to talk about something with the non-residential training program, please clarify your thoughts before you come to interview, so that we can address specifically what the concerns are. And if I start to prattle on, which I do sometimes, I admit, please bring me back to point as well. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.